A station born from Cold War fears. In the shadow of the Cold War, while the world watched the space race unfold between the United States and the Soviet Union, a far more secretive and dangerous project was quietly taking shape. Hidden behind layers of government denial and classified documents, a space station was conceived not for science or peace, but for domination. The station, later dubbed Artemis Outpost Alpha by insiders, was built during the 1980s under the pretense of experimental deep space habitation. But behind its polished press releases and mock training modules was something far more sinister. A militarized orbital platform equipped with experimental propulsion systems and high-energy lasers meant not just for defense, but for deterrence. What made Artemis so uniquely perilous wasn't just its weaponry, it was the station's radical design. Built to stay invisible to ground-based tracking systems, it orbited Earth at an unusually low altitude, where the planet's gravitational pull exerted dangerous stress on its already fragile superstructure. Engineers warned that its shielding wasn't sufficient for long-term human occupancy. But warnings were ignored. By 1987, the first crew of 4 highly trained specialists boarded Artemis. Their mission? Test the endurance of the station, calibrate its laser systems, and, if ordered, conduct surveillance on classified global targets. The launch was shrouded in mystery. No television broadcasts, no ceremonial countdowns, just a silent ascent into orbit, logged only in hidden military archives. What the crew encountered, however, was far from what they were promised. Upon arrival, Artemis was barely livable. The air filtration systems malfunctioned within days. Radiation shielding was grossly inadequate, and worst of all, the onboard power system, an unstable prototype fusion reactor, began to show signs of critical failure. Communication with ground control was strictly one way. No distress signals, no deviation from the mission. The crew documented rising temperatures in the core compartment, strange oscillations in artificial gravity, and unexplained fluctuations in the station's orbit. One crew member, Lieutenant Marcus Havel, began keeping a private log, scribbled by hand and hidden behind loose panels. In it, he detailed sleepless nights filled with the groans of bending metal, whispering vents, and the eerie sensation of not being alone on board. Then, on day 39, the unimaginable happened. A power surge shut down the reactor's coolant system. Temperatures soared, internal cameras began to glitch, and oxygen levels plummeted. The emergency protocols had never been fully tested, and now the 4-person crew was trapped inside a floating coffin 280 kilometers above Earth. Day 40. The emergency beacons were offline. The crew of Artemis Outpost Alpha, orbiting silently above a world unaware of their peril, was now completely cut off from Earth, not by accident, but by design. The protocol stated no contact during classified failure sequences. They were not just expendable, they were invisible. Inside the station, the temperature had risen to 41 degrees Celsius, 105 degrees Fahrenheit. In some modules, sweat dripped down the necks of the crew as they manually rerouted power through unstable bypasses. Lieutenant Marcus Havel's hidden log revealed the psychological breakdown beginning to fracture the team. Claustrophobia, paranoia, and then hallucinations. Commander Elena Morozova, a veteran cosmonaut and the mission leader, reported seeing figures in the docking corridor. But no one had left their module in over 36 hours. Havel dismissed it as heat stroke. But then Specialist Chan, the youngest of the crew, began hearing rhythmic tapping from the airlock, tapping that matched no mechanical pattern. The truth was even more horrifying. Artemis had begun to drift. The station's compromised guidance system had malfunctioned, and it was slowly spiraling downward into the upper layers of Earth's thermosphere. At this rate, within 3 days, the station would begin to fragment, burning up and scattering top-secret technology and radioactive material across the planet. They had one option: to reboot the fusion reactor core manually. But to do that, someone had to crawl into the unshielded thermal cavity, where radiation levels spiked 40 times above safe limits. A death sentence. Commander Morozova volunteered. Her final words on the internal recorder were brief: "If someone finds this, tell the world we were here." She entered the core bay at 0427 UTC. The system was reset successfully, and power surged back online. But Morozova never emerged. Now, a crew of 3, morale shattered, air thinning, the surviving members of Artemis waited for a signal from Earth. It never came. But then, something else arrived. An unidentified object was detected trailing the station, small, maneuverable, and utterly silent. It matched no known Earth launch profile. Havel described it as a black satellite, smooth, with no insignia, no lights, watching us. Was it a recovery unit, a secret observer, or something else entirely? That object stayed in formation with Artemis for over 18 hours, and then vanished. The crew, now unstable, began suspecting they were part of a bigger experiment, not just on stress or spaceflight, but on isolation, fear, and human breaking points. They had been watched the whole time, and just as hope flickered again, another signal appeared on their instruments: a docking request. No launch had been authorized. No rescue was ever planned. 4:52 UTC. The station shuddered gently as the mysterious craft made contact. No impact alarms, no breach alerts, but every internal sensor flashed red for a single heartbeat, and then went dark. The crew froze. Lieutenant Havel gripped the manual override lever near the airlock, sweat pouring down his temples. The internal comms crackled with static before a deep, garbled voice cut through. Authorization. Confirmed. Open. But there had been no request. Specialist Chan begged them not to open the hatch. She had seen movement through the viewport, a silhouette not wearing any standard EVA suit. Just a black shell like obsidian, reflecting no light. They initiated the station lockdown, but the hatch opened anyway, remotely, from outside. Silence followed. No one entered. Then the lights flickered. The crew's portable devices rebooted. When they came back on, all cameras inside the station were disabled and the backup system showed no trace of any docking event. The logs were erased, but one thing had changed. The station was now moving. Its new trajectory? A slingshot toward lunar orbit. Artemis had been hijacked. Day 48. Artemis orbited the moon in silence. The Earth was no longer visible. Communications were not only cut, they were jammed. Every attempt to reach NASA, ESA, Roscosmos, blocked by an unknown frequency. The crew was now prisoners of a station they no longer controlled. Then, a discovery. Inside the now empty docking corridor, Havel found a cylindrical object embedded in the floor panel. It pulsed with a faint red glow and emitted low-frequency vibrations. A scan revealed a structure not made of any known Earth materials. It contained writing, symbols that shifted, changed, shimmered when looked at directly. Elena's final message suddenly decrypted on the internal drive. Not a video, not audio. A dream log she had secretly recorded through the sleep study module. Her last entry read, "I saw it in the stars. A shape waiting beyond the moon. It speaks without sound. It doesn't want us to leave." The crew now understood. This was never just a technical failure. They had stumbled into something ancient. A trap, a warning, or an invitation. Day 51. A structure appeared on the dark side of the moon, buried in shadow. It emitted a signal matching the device planted in their corridor. Chan described it as a city, a broken city, with towers, gates, and movement. Artemis began its descent, not by thrusters, pulled. In the final internal entry of Havel's log, his voice trembles. "If anyone finds this, don't come looking." This place, it remembers. Day 52. Artemis 9 landed in total darkness, not on a crater, not on regolith, on a surface of smooth obsidian-like material stretching far beyond the visible horizon. The moon, as the world knew it, had lied. This wasn't a natural satellite anymore. It was hollow. The crew emerged, tethered, cautious. No radio response, no sign of interference, just an oppressive silence that felt alive. Their helmets picked up vibrations underfoot, a rhythm, a pattern. It was breathing. Specialist Chan, monitoring seismic feedback, noticed impossible readings. Tunnels, chambers, vast spaces beneath them. One of the hollows extended for kilometers, and at its center, an active energy source buried beneath a thick crust of this alien alloy. Then the door appeared. Not a hatch, not a rock formation. A vertical slit opened in the moon's crust like liquid steel parting. An invitation. Elena's logs had mentioned something like this. When the moon opened, I heard it thinking. Inside was a chamber of mirrors, reflective walls not showing their reflection, but rather their memories. Childhood homes, lost relatives, failed missions. It was scanning them emotionally. Havel touched one of the walls. It rippled, and a voice spoke. "You are not the first." Day 54. They descended, not walking, pulled gently by a force like artificial gravity in reverse. The deeper they went, the more Earth-like the environment became. Oxygen levels increased, radiation vanished, time slowed. The chamber at the bottom wasn't built for humans. It was a control room. Thousands of seats arranged in a spiral. In the center, a throne of some kind fused with cables running deep into the moon's core. Chan theorized it was a kind of biological AI designed to regulate something far bigger. Then the revelation came. A projection lit up. It showed Earth, millions of years ago, but not with one moon, with three. Over millennia, two vanished, imploded, consumed, and the third modified, repurposed. The moon was a failsafe, a dormant monitoring station created not by alien invaders, but possibly by the last survivors of Earth itself, from a cycle of extinction long forgotten. And now it had awakened. Day 55. The crew lost track of time. Havel no longer remembered how long they'd been down there. Days? Minutes? The AI revealed its name, Cora, a sentient memory core designed to activate only when humanity reached a threshold of global threat. Climate collapse, nuclear capacity, AI independence. Cora claimed Earth had now passed that threshold. The moon was no longer just a watcher, it was preparing to act. The crew was given a choice: return and warn the planet, or remain. and help rebuild using knowledge Earth had forgotten. Only one crew member chose to leave. Day 58. The Artemis return capsule re-entered Earth's atmosphere with one passenger, Commander Havel. The others stayed behind, by choice or by force, no one knows. Inside the capsule was a message. They won't believe you, but show them this. Enclosed, a sample of the moon's inner core material, not a metal, not a mineral, a living fragment pulsing faintly, still breathing.